Hey, what's going on, fam? Welcome to another episode of Call to Serve podcast. I am your host, Reggie Hubbard. If you haven't done it yet, please like, comment, subscribe, share, all that jazz. It really helps support our mission of serving those who support other. You can listen or watch Call to Serve podcast anywhere that you like to watch your favorite podcast. Call to Serve podcast can also be heard on Reach Across America Radio on Sundays at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can find Reach Across America Radio on iHeartRadio app, the Odyssey app, and the TuneIn app by searching the word Wreath. Today, we have a very special guest with us. This is truly a man of service, truly a man that cares for other people. He served in youth corrections counseling for over 31 years. He's a former foster youth himself and currently a junior college football coach. So he loved to pour into and develop young people. Without further ado, the great Ron Jenkins. Welcome, brother. How are you?
I'm doing great, Reggie. I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you having me here on Call to Serve podcast. And hopefully we can inspire some people today. I looked at some of the work you've done. It's great work, and I just wanted to be a part of it.
Well, I appreciate that. It means the world because I created this space specifically for people like you who have made many sacrifices over a lifetime and
Yes.
dedicated most of their lives to serving other people. So thank you for your time. I know you're busy, so it means the world that you took some time to come on the podcast today. So I would like to start, Ron, if you could just give us a brief background on who you are, kind of how you came up and kind of how that's led you to where you are today.
Well, let's just say this, Reggie. We strive to do things that serve our communities. Um, we try to do things that bring goodwill. You know, I was fortunate enough through my faith um, to have an opportunity to do one of the two things that was most important to me as a young man. And that was either allowing my football talents to take me to the NFL. And then the second was, if I didn't make that route, was to work with youth. And God gave me an opportunity to work with youth. Um, One out of two is not bad. And so I was a former foster youth, which is where those ideologies came from. My mother died when I was a baby, so I was forced into the foster care system. And I was eventually adopted by this lady who was my foster parent. Unfortunately, she adopted me, my brothers, several other kids. And from that experience, she took the monies that the county gave her to take care of us, and she bought drugs to make more money. So basically, if let's just say we were making $1,200 a month in federal and state funds, she would turn that into 24, 36, or whatever she thought was needed. From that, and I'm talking about the selling drugs part. We was exposed to drugs at a young age, drug usage, drug sales, the handling of drugs. There were times when I would see cocaine, marijuana, pills on our living room table with money, the whole shebang, just like a situation that you would see in a movie.
Mm.
From that experience, I have 4 brothers killed and 1 sister go to prison. 2 brothers killed had PCP in their system when they were killed, and another brother killed as a result of transporting drugs, and then another brother killed one late night. We don't know how he died, but my point is this: that environment um, showed us things that we didn't need to see at a very young age. And, whatever environment you grow up in, you pretty much become like that environment. And that's pretty much what happened. All my brothers were on drugs. They entered into criminal activity to support their drug habits because that's the way it goes. Um, I had a sister go to prison for 5 years. She's out now. She's doing well. She turned her life over to Christ.
Mm.
And I would actually say that that's where my true beginning began at age 13, when after being slapped by this same sister that I'm talking about, very abusive environment. You could get hit for anything. You could get hit with a broom. You could get hit with extension cord. One time, my mother put a knife to my throat and told me she killed me because I lost some drug money that she had me holding. Um, and when I got slapped, I only knew one thing to do. Well, actually, two. The first thing I thought about was taking my life because I was tired of being abused. This wasn't the first time, and I knew it probably wouldn't be the last. The second thing I knew to do was to drop down to my knees and pray and ask God for help. And that's what I did. In a puddle of tears, I dropped down to my knees and I asked God to help get me out of this situation. And from that point on, things started occurring in my life that probably no one would understand. And I'll just take it to the next level. Me and some friends, some hooligan buddies, was hanging out in my backyard. We had a BB gun. We ended up shooting the BB gun across the street and it shot out this gentleman's window. That evening, he came to my house and he told my foster mother that I shot his window out. And I came to the door and I said, "No, sir, I didn't shoot your window out." He said, "Well, you probably wasn't the one that did it, but you were responsible because you were with the guys who did it." He said, "Instead of calling the police, at I want you to meet me at my house this Saturday morning. You're going to work this debt off to pay for my window." He was a contractor. So he picked me up and we went to remodel his bathroom. And he had a job for me. And I had to tear out these two walls with a sledgehammer while he went to go get supplies. I knew nothing about structural building or architect, anything like that. I felt like if I tore these two walls out, the whole house would fall down. That's what my 13-year-old mind was thinking. Anyway, he left. I tore the walls down. He came back. The wood was stacked up. He was impressed. He was like, "Man, that's a good job. You did a good job." And so we continued to work every Saturday to pay off this debt for his window. One Saturday, the lady who owned this house came outside and she told him, his name was Harrell Burnett. She said, "Mr. Burnett, I've known you a long time. I know you have a son. I know this is not your son, but he looks like you." And Mr. Burnett looked at her and said, "This is my son." So there's God working in my life because I didn't have a father. I was only being raised by a single mother, or a single foster mom, whose ideology of taking care of kids was getting the money, turning it into more money by selling drugs. There was no hugs. There was no "you had to go to school." It was all about cleaning all day and doing what she say or suffer the consequences. And the consequences was usually something brutal. Now we had all the clothes. This was back in the day. You probably don't even remember this, Reggie, but they had Sergio Tacchini sweatsuits, Jordan Ash, and they had these members only jackets. So we had all of this stuff. We had the clothes. As a matter of fact, we had too much stuff. And how we got this stuff, the same thing they're doing today, the snatch and grab. The snatch and grab gang members would go to the malls and snatch the stuff and they bring them to the drug house, and that's where they sell the loot to get the money. So that's how that kind of works. So I was wearing Jordache. I had members only, and people probably thought, "Wow, they're doing well," but they don't know the physical abuse and the things that was taking place in that household that was consuming us as kids and turning us into adults faster than we had to be,
Mm.
thus causing us to make drastic decisions that landed my brothers into jail, which ultimately led to their deaths.
Wow.
Um, it was a situation that provided nothing but fear. Looking back on it today, I didn't even know I was living in fear, but I was. Um, but there was always a sense of purpose within me. I knew my situation was not good for me. Uh, when I was 11 years old, my brother got arrested in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. LAPD stormed in our house, guns drawn, flashlights flashing. They snatched my brother out of his bed in his boxers, handcuffed him, and took him to youth prison for 5 years. I didn't see him until 5 years later, other than the times that we went to go visit him and share his chocolate bars and everything that they let you buy while you're visiting people in prison. Um, so that was kind of stuck in my head. I never wanted that to be me. There was other incidents. I had friends that were gang members and I hung out with them because these were the kids that were in my community. These are the kids that I played football in the street with,
Mm-hmm.
baseball in the street with. And I hung out with those guys. But I always knew that when they made decisions to do something wrong, that's when it was time for me to go. And I'll give you an example. We were hanging out one time, and I'm gonna give you this specific street. It's called 75th between Vermont and Hoover. Look it up. It'll tell you exactly what's going on in that area. High gang, high crime, high everything. Everybody's high too. Anyway, so this gentleman was coming out of the store, an older gentleman, and I guess he was on his way to get his midday fifth of vodka. He came
Mm.
out the store. He had the vodka in his hand in a bag, and he's walking. And one of the guys in our group says, "Hey, let's rob the fool." And so they start running after this guy. They catch up with him at the alley. I'm staying right where I am. They catch up with him at the alley. They start beating him. They hit him. One guy hit him in the head with a 2x4. He falls to the ground. They take his alcohol and they take everything out of his pocket and they run. I didn't get involved in that. I didn't want to be involved in it. I stayed where I was and I turned and I went the other way. Those are the kind of decisions that God put on my heart to make when I got in trouble situations. These are my buddies. We hung out. We were at each other's house all the time. But I knew that's not the kind of life that I wanted to live. And when they made decisions to involve themselves in criminal activity, it was time for me to go the other way, you know. Um, Now, some say, how did you get a pass? Why didn't they, call you a mark or say, you weren't down? Well, my brothers and my sisters who were gang members had already set the path for me. So I didn't have to get involved in anything. They knew what my pedigree was per se. But those things were not me. And I credit that to my prayer and I credit that to just understanding and having a sense of purpose in my life, even from a young age. I remember one time I got jacked. We had moved into this neighborhood I'm speaking of now, and these five guys, they end up jacking me. I used to work at the car wash. I would go to the car wash and help people wash and dry their cars. And one day I made like $30. This is back in the 80s. I was walking home and these gang members came across the street and I knew they was targeting me. Before I knew it, my pockets, every pocket I had was turned inside out. It wasn't physically demanding. It hurt me emotionally more than anything. And usually what you're taught in those situations is you got to get revenge. Revenge means by any means necessary, whether you shoot them, you fight them, or you do something, to gain your respect as a person. The only thing I did was go home, told my mom what happened, and was probably more cautious after that. But eventually, I ended up meeting these guys and ended up fighting them, not for this incident, just because that's the way the hood, operates. Excuse me. And we all, became friends and grew up together. But still, I knew there was a difference between the decisions that they made and the decisions that I was going to make. And they continued to gang bang. And yes, probably 80% of those guys end up going to prison. And then the rest of them end up getting killed for some reason, whether they were robbing somebody or it was a gang related act. But what I want to focus on is just my process and how I dealt, with these situations that could have been, very bad for my life. And one of the things that foster kids go through is they don't they don't have a trust level, because they've been failed by their parents, they've been failed by the system, they've been failed by so many people that their trust level is extremely low, and rightfully so. They've been beat, they've been sexually abused, they've been psychologically abused, they've been tricked, they've been manipulated, they've been lied to by parents, aunties, probation officers, social workers, and not purposely, not purposely, but when a kid is in the foster care system and we're talking about placing them in situations that we feel as professionals are safe, but yet the kid is there, he's being abused there, he's being treated bad, all these things are going on. What the results of that is that you do lose trust in everything, you know. And my message is how I overcame the things that was happening with me was I was very observant. I didn't say much, but I was very observant. And I watched people. And in watching people, I chose people who I knew were safe. Like this gentleman who chose to allow me to work out that debt, you know. I chose people like him, people who he told me, I'm not going to call the police. So that's something to trust right there. He said, I'm not going to call the police because, that's what usually happens and that's not good. Well, I end up getting out of school, going to his house and spending time with him. His wife became my tutor. I started doing better in school. He became like a father figure. So I would get out of school, and instead of going to my foster home where I knew it was crazy, I would go to his house or I would go to another friend's house. Basically, I sought out people in my community that I felt were safe for me. There was a guy that lived right next door to me. He was a handyman. I would hang out at his house. And then hanging out with these gentlemen, not only did I learn things, but they taught me how to earn money because I would eventually end up working for them and they give me $2, $3, $5. This back in the 80s. So that's a lot, when
Decent
you're a
bread. That's
15-year
decent
old
bread back
kid,
then. Yeah.
you know. Um, so it's about making decisions, it's about making choices, and it's about understanding that there's no better advocate for you than you, right? We know how we feel, we know the things that we're going through, we know the things that we're struggling with, but we don't understand that we do have the power to speak up and say something. When we become self advocates, our lives turn out much better than, or should I say, faster, than us waiting or just sitting back and allowing things to happen to us that shouldn't happen to us. Whether it's sexual abuse, physical abuse, or you're just in an environment that's not meeting the needs that you feel are important to you, you need to find trusted people like teachers or social workers or pastors or people in the church or other family members. Sometimes we have to choose our family, and I've done that.
Mhm.
The one that was given to me, well, my mom, she passed away, and then my father wasn't there. But the family that was given to me through the foster care system wasn't one that was conducive to me growing up and being a respectful, successful young man. So in that journey, I had to look outside of that home to find things that were beneficial to me that I knew would get me to the next phase in life.
Yeah.
Um, and again, I go back to that moment of falling on my knees and praying and ask God to get me out of this situation. And then God putting placing people in my life until I asked, I made that prayer at 13. 7 years later, at 20, here I am getting a football scholarship after only 4 years of football. I played 10th grade. I was horrible. I was a little better in the 11th grade, and then I was a little bit better in the 12th grade. It wasn't until I went to junior college that things started to click for me athletically. Number one, I caught up because I put in the work. And then next thing you know, I'm getting a football scholarship to Fresno State. If you would have asked my friends in high school, would Ron Jenkins get a football scholarship? They would have told you, not in a million years.
Mm.
But what they didn't know was I needed an outlet from all of this trauma that I was going through in my household. And sports provided that outlet. You hear the stories all the time of guys that grow up in terrible situations and they make it to the NFL to change their lives. I didn't make it to the NFL, but I'm going to tell you something. Sports played a big role in my growth because working out is definitely something that helps with anxiety, stress, or any type of mental health issues that you're going through. If you look at the studies now, it's being proven that athletic activity has a direct positive effect on depression, anxiety, and all those things. Now, I didn't know this, but now that I look back on it, I can see where football was my release. It was my way of releasing all these inconsistencies in my life. So I get a football scholarship to Fresno State. I study social work, and I did an internship with Fresno County Juvenile Hall. And once I did that internship, I knew that that was the road I wanted to go down, because at first I wanted to be a social worker. So I wanted to help kids in foster care like myself. But then once I did the internship with Fresno County Juvenile Hall, I saw that the type of kids that were being locked up were the same type of kids that came through foster care systems like me, because they didn't have no real structure or love provided to them. Therefore, they looked to the streets and they found gangs, and then they found drugs, and they found all those negative things that put them in a position where they had to make decisions to survive, which was to either do crime. And when you do crime, more than likely, only two things going to happen: you're going to get killed or you're going to go to jail. So I felt like this was an environment that I really wanted to work with, and I worked with that environment for 31 years. I had some great success. I had one young lady named Carissa Phelps. You can look her up. Look up Carissa Phelps, anti-human trafficking. I worked with her. She was a runaway because her father was starting to abuse her and her sister. She ran away. She met a girl in the streets who forced her into human trafficking. She gets locked up. I become her counselor. I work with her for 3 years. 6 years later, she finds me and nominates me the person that helped her save her life through journaling and putting her into self-esteem camps and paying more attention to her education route, and just taking the necessary steps that it took to allow her an opportunity to change her life. Now she's a practicing attorney in Florida after getting business and law degrees from UCLA. She is today my goddaughter. She's been in my life for the past 30 years. There are other young men and young women that I've worked with that are now successful. And I don't have a plan that's any different than what's out there now. I consider myself a mentor, and it's grassroots stuff. I'm talking about going to lunch. If you like football games, yes, we can go to football games. If you like the movies, we can go to the movies. If you like ice cream, we can do that too. But at the same time, what are you doing to earn these things? Have your grades improved? Have your attitude improved? Are you getting along with teachers now? Are you doing the things necessary to allow your life to change? When people are reaching for you, you can't forget that you have to reach back. Everybody's pouring out to you, but you're not giving anything. You're just this stoic person still staying the same. Well, when people are reaching out to you, you got to reach back. That's how life works. There's no other way around it. If you continue to be that stoic person who doesn't want to change, then there'll be no change in your life. There's a saying: if you keep doing things the same way, you keep getting the same result. So
Yeah,
you
that's the
got to
definition of
change.
insanity.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
100%.
So you got to change to make a change, pretty much. So I did that for 31 years. And of course, as I said, I played sports. So after I retired, I started coaching JC football. I coach at Southwest JC in Los Angeles. And I experienced a lot of young men who have come up through situations like mine. And I embrace those kids and I share my story like I did in a correctional facility for 31 years. They tell us, don't share your story. I was like, no, my story needs to be told, because this is what these kids can identify with. It gives me instant credibility that I've been through some of the same things that they've been through. And I've known it to be helpful, because kids will contact me on Facebook that was locked up where I worked, and they'll say, "Hey, man, I just wanted to reach out to you and tell you I'm doing good. I want to thank you for being this kind of person. I want to thank you for being that kind of person." And that's why it was important for me to share my story. But the same kids that, um um I grew up around or I was with are the same kids that I'm working with today. Who better to work with these kids than somebody who's experienced the exact same things that they've gone through, you know? And what I
100%.
do understand is that it's a process. It's not something that happens overnight. We get kids all the time, and as soon as they come into our program, they're bucking the system. They're trying to do everything they can to not do it the way that we've asked them to do it. But we stick with them and we butt heads, and pretty soon, these kids come around and they understand that it takes discipline to be great. It takes discipline to get from one step to another, and they buy into what we're selling. We're selling a life for them that they probably never dreamed of. I never thought I would go to college, you know, and a lot of times those situations become successful. We have kids who didn't even think they were for college, going to college. And the fun part is when you see a kid come in and he's uncertain and he gets to the point where he starts to believe in what we're saying. And he starts to ask questions like, what is the college campus like? When they start asking that question, right there they're starting to believe that this is a possibility for them. And we just let them know, believe me, it's something that you need and you want to experience, because that's what it's about. It's about exposing our kids to different things that they have no idea that's out there from them. I know that when I lived in South LA, um, I never been to the north part of town. And now I go to the north part of town. I think to myself, man, look at these big, pretty, nice houses over here. I didn't know this stuff existed over here. So, word pictures trigger words and words trigger pictures. And that when you're exposed to other things, then you start to see yourself being a part of those things. And then you ask the question, how can I do that? How can I be there? What can I do to earn these things? And then there starts, a process of learning how to become successful. And that's all our job as coaches is, to teach our kids how to become successful. First, in education. The football is the vehicle. Education, that's the key. That's where the difference is made, you know. And I used to tell the young men in the correctional facility, I don't care how you came in here. I don't care what gang you belong to. I respect you because that's where your mentality is now. But just do me one favor, because you're going to mature. It may be at 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, or 25. When you mature, you must have had completed your high school diploma or your high school proficiency exam, because that's you're going to need that to take the next step in life, to get a job, to be considered for a job, to do a lot of things. And if you don't have it, you're going to end up doing a U-turn right back to all the negative stuff, because you're not going to be employable. So do me a favor, while you're here for 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, make sure you leave here with your high school diploma. And if you get your high school diploma and you got 3 years left, start working on some college credit. And I guarantee you, when maturity catches up with you, you're going to need this. And it's going to be the most precious thing that you can have, or it's going to send you back down into a spiral of negativity, because it's not going to allow you to get to the next step. That's what this thing about. You get your high school diploma. Well, you start off in elementary, you graduate elementary, you get that paper. Then you go to high school, you graduate college, you get that paper. This about getting those papers that allow you to take the next steps in your life. That's what this is really about.
Mm. Well, I mean, yeah, you're absolutely 100% right. Um, and I like when you said when somebody reach back out, or I can't remember exactly how you worded it, but it was something like that. That's very powerful. There's a lot of people in there that need help uh, in the world, and there's a lot of kids out there who who need guidance. I personally am very passionate about working with the next generation. I've got a question for you. How do you connect with youth who are hardened, angry, or have experienced trauma like your own?
Those are my favorite to work with because they're usually sitting in the back. They're not saying nothing. They're easy to pick out. They don't think so, but they're easy to pick out. It's not easy because you have to break down a lot of walls. You have to break down the walls of abuse, the walls of manipulation, the walls of lies, the walls of uncertainty, the walls of lack of trust, and how you engage those people is you let them know that you're there to help, and when they're ready, you're available, and
Mm,
then you continue to check in after that. Then you continue to check in after that. You're breaking down years and years of trauma, you
yeah,
know. And the other thing is offering assistance, finding out what they're interested in, finding out what their interests are. Believe me, there's a lot of guys in prison that are very intelligent. So a kid in the back of the room angry, it doesn't mean he's dumb. It doesn't mean he's not intelligent. It just means he's had some emotional trauma that he don't know how to deal with. He or she don't know how to deal with, you know.
yeah.
And one of the things that we like to do when I worked in a correctional facility is that we would give these kids jobs. We would allow them to be the person that swept the floor, or he had a responsibility. And you would see that these were some of the most helpful, loyal, and dedicated, responsible kids. And that would be something we would use to break down the lack of communication or conversation. And then once they start talking to you, then you start creating understanding. And these kids that came in hard and harsh, they leave out with a smile on their face, or they leave out better than when they came. You know, it's not
Yeah.
an easy road, especially based on the type of trauma they had. Like if there was some physical abuse or sexual abuse or something like that, then we need to take it a step forward and get them involved into some clinical therapy. Someone who's impartial to what they're dealing with, and someone who knows and understands how to break those things down and get this kid, you know, to come out and talk about these things that have happened to them.
Wow.
Yeah.
I want to take it back just a little bit. Thanks for sharing that. I remember earlier in our conversation, you talked about revenge, and you said by any means necessary. But I know it's in your bio, and it seems like part of your mission. You said that you set out to avenge your brother's deaths by saving lives. What did that decision, or what does that decision look like for you?
Um, well, you're exactly right. That was my goal. Um, because the other side of that is, when you come from gang neighborhoods, or you come from neighborhoods where there's a lot of um turf war, the thing is, if you kill one of mine, I have to kill one of yours. And if we go back to when I mentioned seeing my brother handcuffed at 11 years old, and he was 15 and snatched out of the house and taken to jail and didn't come back till 5 years. That's a movie that plays in my head all the time. It allowed me to understand that if I made those decisions, that would be me too.
Mm,
And I think another thing that kids don't understand is that if you go to prison and leave your mother or your father behind, your little sisters, then who's going to fend for them? Prison
100%.
is not for you unless you make a choice to allow it to be for you. You know, a lot of times we have young men whose fathers and uncles, they have gone to prison, so they think that it's cool, or they think that it's all right. No, this prison is not for you. We've already been down that road with slavery in terms of African American people, and we don't want to give that privilege back to the system. That's what we don't want to do. Um, I think you have to understand that there's only two choices when you choose criminal activity. One is prison and the other one is death. And I will say this: had I chose to gang bang, had I chose to get revenge from my brothers, I would not be here today, and I would have not experienced the graces of God that I've had in my life. I mean, after a horrible childhood, I've had an absolutely amazing adult life, other than having to deal with the emotional trauma that I had to deal with from the abuses that I experienced as a young man. And I've gone through therapy, I've gone through counseling, spiritual, conventional, to overcome those traumas that I experienced in that foster home. But had I made a decision to kill somebody or do something stupid, I would have never been able to see my life change to what it is. I would have never been able to give back the way I'm able to give back. I would have never been able to um, help my community or coach football or share the relationship that I have with my son. My life is completely different than the one that I grew up in, but I would have never been able to experience that if I would have taken my life, if I would have chose to do something wrong to go to prison. I would have never been able to experience the goodness of my life and where I'm at today.
Wow. Yeah. Well, that's powerful. There's always a choice. You know what I mean? And I've had family members who it seems like they go to prison for years, get out for a quick second, go back to prison for years. It's like they want to go back. They don't know anything else, or it's just, or the outside or society makes them afraid, or they feel like they can't function outside of a cell.
Well, we're all conditioned to our environments,
Hundred
you
percent.
know, and
Yeah.
that prison thing, they call it being institutionalized. And
Yeah.
I've experienced that, and I wasn't a prisoner, but because I worked in that environment for 31 years, when I go out to a restaurant, I got to have my back to a wall. I need to
Mm-hmm.
see everybody coming in the door. That's a form of institutionalized, you
Mm-hmm.
know. Um, when you've been in that environment, there's a safety net that comes with it, in that environment. But that safety net doesn't leave when you leave. It kind of follows you there. I had a buddy, he served 24 years. When they started changing the legislation for releasing criminals, I got with him and I gave him a plan of action. That plan of action worked. He got out of prison. And 2 years later, he was right back in there
Mm.
after doing 24 years. And he's in there now. As a matter of fact, he's next on my list of guys things I have to do because I have to write him a letter and keep his spirits where I think they need to be. Because I know that there's a good person in him because when I was 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, he was my friend and he was a good friend. He was the kind of person that wasn't going to let anything happen to you. And I pay homage to that. Um, the decisions that he's made or his decisions has nothing to do with the decisions he made as a friend to me when I was a young kid, you know.
Yeah. I wonder. Because we hear that a lot. We hear, oh, this guy or this person, because it can be women also, is serving a bid, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk to people who knew them or who know them, you always get, oh man, this was a really great person, very nice, very loving, very caring. I've often wondered, and I'm sure it can differ, what causes them to do something to land them in prison.
Well,
Um,
this particular friend, um, there's a saying that my football coach would always tell us, and he would say, "Pride will kill you faster than a bullet, and it's a slow death."
hmm,
This guy was very prideful in the fact that he felt like if anybody said anything disrespectful to him, or if anybody did anything disrespectful to him, then there had to be a revenge factor not an avenge factor, but a revenge factor.
Wow.
And that's how he landed in prison. Someone did something to someone he knew, and he was seeking revenge, and he ended up in prison for 23 years because his pride wasn't in check.
Wow.
When I was a kid, we used to always hear the phrase "sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never kill." You know, that's the thing they sold us. And
Mhm.
and if you hear it long enough, it becomes real to you. You know, I don't hear it anymore. Maybe it's because I'm not 5 or 10, but I don't hear that anymore. But the point is this: you can't go through life with a chip on your shoulder that every time somebody says something to you or does something to you, you feel like you have to get even.
Yeah.
Because even is uneven sometimes in that you don't know what that other person is going through, or you don't know what that other person's revenge factor is. So if you got two people who don't care about killing somebody, that's a bad situation to be in right there.
Mhm.
Somebody's not going to win, you know. And you need to just be more cognizant about situations you put yourself into. Again, it goes back to making choices. Again, it goes back to understanding that the choices that you make, you have to serve the consequences, you know.
100%.
And it's simple. If you make good choices, good things are going to happen. If you make bad choices, then bad things are going to happen. If you make 5 good choices and 10 bad choices, more than likely the bad thing is going to catch up with you. That's just how it is. That's the numbers game. You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're
So
saying.
we have to be really cognizant about where we are, what we're doing, who we're around, who's around the corner, who we're allowing in our car, who we're allowing in our room. You know, my son is 31 now. When he turned 18, I got a call um, from the sheriff's department, and they called me because my son told the guy that was doing this arrest or whatever they were doing that I was a law enforcement. So he called me and told me, "Hey, can you come around here?" So I left my house. I get around there, and the officer pulls me to the side. He goes, "Hey, your son told me you were law enforcement." I said, "Yeah, I'm law enforcement. I work here." He says, "Well, your son was in the back seat. We found um, marijuana and stuff like that in the car. It was under the front seat. Your son was sitting in the back seat. It could be the guys in the front seat. It could be the guys in the back seat, which is your son. He's 18 years old. I didn't want this to reflect on him. Um, we're going to put it on the guy that's driving the car because it was under his seat toward the front. And we're going to release your son to you." And I got my son, I took him home, I sat him down, I said, "Man, you just escaped your life going in a direction that it was probably going to take 5 to 7 years for you to correct. This was a wake-up call for you. Had you got charged with that, you would be playing catch up for the next 5 to 7 years. And you need to understand that." And I think I don't know what scared him, the situation or the way I grabbed his arm, but he never made that decision again.
Hey, sometimes that's what you need,
Yeah.
sometimes because when you're 18, I mean, you ain't even got your grown man strength yet. You get what I'm
Well, you
saying?
think you
And
do.
you think you do,
You think you do.
but you get grabbed by a man and you like, "Whoa, hold on, what is that?" It's
Yeah.
just
That
it's just
part.
a it's a rites of passage, man. You know what
Right.
I mean?
Right.
And
Right.
I was 18. I went in the army when I was 17, so I was a little bit different than most of the people I grew up with or who I even knew. But yeah, man, that was a blessing in disguise, man, because the reality is they could have charged them both.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Exactly right. And let me just say this. You know, I heard a pastor one time and he was preaching on, the evolution of life, and he was saying that um, we as young men need to get in touch with men who are older than us. And those older men need to get in touch with men that are older than them.
Mm.
because the fact of the matter is everybody's going where somebody's been. Everybody's going where
Mm.
somebody's been.
Everybody's
So
going with
why
someone's
not
been.
have someone in your life that's been where you're going? They have
Mm.
all the answers to all the situations. So if you're 20, why not have somebody 30 in your life? If you're 30, why not have somebody 40 in your life? And if you're 50, why not have somebody 60 in your life? Because they can tell you about all the medical situations that you're going to face as a 60-year-old, you know? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So to you young guys out there that are teenagers and 20-year-olds, hey man, get some old guys in your life. They're gonna tell you like it is. Get some guys that have made some mistakes and get some guys that haven't made some mistakes. And they got the answers for you, man. They got answers more pure than you'll ever think. But the problem is, as a young, energetic cat, testosterone high, you think you know everything. No,
Mm.
bruh, you don't know everything. If you take, or say you're 20 and you got a brother that's 15 or 10, and some of the things your brother or 15-year-old do, you think to yourself, you thought you was going to get away with that. It's the same thing. You take somebody that's 25 or 30, they know 25 to 10 more years what you don't know. So why not reach to them and say, hey, how's this going to turn out? You know,
Yeah.
or what should I be doing so I can secure the next 5 years of my life? You know, you get
Wow.
a person that's went off and done some bad things, talk to them, and a person that's done no bad things and talk to them and find your happy medium, man. The answers are out there. We just don't go get them. The answers are not in your cell phone.
That's real,
Answers are
man.
not in. Half of this stuff is lies and is made up, man.
That's so
Don't
real,
don't
man.
live through here. Live through real life experiences. Your uncle, your cousins, your grandparents, your grandfather, your people in your hood. That guy down the street that drives the Mercedes with the nice house, the grass cut. Go talk to him. Ask him how he did that. That's
Yeah.
what you need to do.
That's real, man.
That
That's real.
that's that's those are the people I hung out with. I used to hang out over with the old guys who they had a pool table. So I would go over them and look around and be like, man, how y'all do this? You know, that's what you need to do. Don't go hang out with the people that's just like you or worse than you. Go hang out with the people that where you vision your life to be. Go ask them some questions. There's some people that'll help you if you ask.
Mm. That's real. And I'm gonna keep that. I'm actually gonna put that in my book. Everyone's going where someone else has been, because that's real. Um, Before I let you go, I do have one more question for you, because it looks like we're coming up on time.
Okay.
Um, what might people be surprised to know about you?
Wow. That's a great question, man.
Thank
And
you.
I think that um, prior to us doing this interview, our pre-interview, I asked you how deep did you want me to go, you know.
Oh man.
And I'm gonna just say this. Um, I mentioned earlier about some abuses that I've experienced, as a kid. I wasn't specific that I didn't mention that I experienced sexual abuse as a kid when I was 10 years old by a babysitter. And I bring that up because this happened at age 10, but it wasn't till age 55 that the results of that affected my life. And I'm going to go through this story. So I was working and I ended up being somebody who worked with me made some sexual advances towards me. It was a female, made some sexual advances toward me. It was a supervisor. And I didn't like them. I didn't turn her in because guys don't turn people in like that. I should have. But they were so aggressive that it made me feel uncomfortable. And so it became a decision to where if I wanted to, take on these advances or remain true to myself, which I've always done, I remain true to myself. But it had an impact on me. And it sent me into a little bit of a depression to where I had to see a therapist. Now, I thought that these situations were long gone or I had closed them out. So then I had to take a look at who I was as a person when it came to that. Now, here's the point. I divorced twice. Okay. I wasn't a bad husband. I didn't cheat. I didn't beat on my wives. I didn't yell at them. I didn't scream at them. But at the same time, I didn't allow them to love me the
Mm,
way they needed to love me because I always had a hand up because of these abuse situations. When you've gone through sexual abuse, you develop some trauma that you don't even know that's going on,
yeah.
you know. So I felt like these relationships I were in were solid on the intimate and emotional level, but they weren't because I never let a woman get that close to me to where she could hurt me that way again. And I learned this through therapy. And my therapist asked me, um, how was your, intimate or, and I'm not talking about sexual, I'm talking about just daily conversation, how was your relationship with your spouses? And I was like, oh, it was cool, you know, but I had to ask myself, who was I really in that relationship? And that's the question I needed, the answer I needed. Who was I in that relationship?
Yeah.
And I have to go back and say that I was a good guy, but I probably wasn't as emotionally stable in that relationship as I needed to be because of my abuses. Now I've gone through therapy, I've gone through that. I've gone, through that. I've overcome it for now because it's something that could jump back up, But in therapy, what you learn is how to cope, So now in my relationship now with my new fiance, I'm more open to her wishes and her ideas, and I'm listening more and I'm talking more and I'm expressing myself more and I'm allowing her to be closer to me on a verbal level, on an emotional level. Like you couldn't, like as a woman in my life, you couldn't just touch my face. I would be like, no, get your hands on my face. Now allow her to touch me. If she wants to pick something off my face, she can pick something off my face. But before I would be like, look, don't touch me because I was going back to
Yeah.
my abusive stage and protecting myself, protecting that little boy that was abused. But I was this way as a man. So I thought I was allowing these women to love me, but I really wasn't because I had that hand up like, no, you can't get that close. Don't touch my face. Don't put your arms around me while we got to hold hands, that kind of stuff. But I've broken through that through therapy and because I understand where it comes from. And it's not that it's gone, it's just that I remember and I know how to cope. So now when my girl reaches for my hand, I may be thinking, why she want to hold my hand? Well, I'm holding her hand because she wants to hold my hand. And because that's how you are in a relationship. So that's the last part of this. And the reason why I bring this up is because there are so many men out there who have gone through sexual abuse or some type of abuse at the hands of a woman, and they don't understand the impact that it's having on them in terms of future relationships or finding a relationship that satisfies you, in a way that is healthy for both you and the partner that you're in the relationship. So
Mm,
I would say that's the thing that probably somebody would know or think about me because my personality loves people, you know,
yeah.
but I've had a lot to overcome, you know, and I'm grateful that I have a spiritual base, and I'm grateful that as a man, that I understood that therapy was not the enemy. I mean,
Yeah.
we say it in our Black communities that therapy is only for white people. No, I'm here to tell you that's not true. In working in the correctional environment, I saw a lot of young Black males that were impulsive and they needed some type of therapy, whether it was conventional or medication, that if they had, they wouldn't be in that situation anyway. When you have an impulsive teenager, you got a lot of trouble on your hands. And this teenager needs some therapy to deal with those emotions that he experienced whether it's conventional or medication, you know.
Yeah. I think I've heard that before. I just think it's my personal opinion. I just think it's ignorant because I mean I'm obviously not white and I've gone through therapy. I go to through therapy now. I'm a veteran. You know what I mean? And I have no shame in that, and it's helped me, and it's helping me. Because it's when you experience trauma, it's an ongoing battle, right? So you got to get all the way up the hill, but you got to keep yourself from rolling back down. So um, yeah,
Me-
I really appreciate you sharing that, and really just being because I can understand how vulnerable that information is, those experiences, and not everybody's just gonna come, you know, and say that. And I think there's a lot of people are going to be blessed and people are going to be encouraged. And I hope if there are men out here listening who have experienced sexual abuse and they're just keeping it hidden away, that you do find the courage, and that you do feel empowered to talk to someone about it. I really, I really think that. Um, Before I let you go, I do have something for you. What I have for you is a custom Call to Serve podcast challenge coin. And
Okay.
on the back, it has our mission, our slogan, serving those who serve others. And what I would love for this to be for you, um, Ron, is just a reminder of why you do what you do, why you have served, you know, a lifetime or spent a lifetime serving others. And and that's it. And I also have a sticker for you. Put on a laptop, a water bottle, wherever, if you want. That can also be a reminder of why you choose to serve. I think that your story is powerful. I've been blessed being able to kind of sit and talk to you and hear you out for the last almost hour. And I really do believe that there are going to be people out there who listen to this episode and they're going to be blessed and they're going to be impacted. They're going to feel empowered. They're going to be encouraged because the reality is that when you're going through that, sometimes you can feel like you're all alone.
Yes,
And I
sir.
want everyone to know that you're not alone. There's people out here who have your back and there's resources out there available uh, to help you get through this. So I definitely appreciate you coming through.
Reggie, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you for being vulnerable and talking about the fact that, you feel that therapy, is a part of your process as well. I think a lot of young black men need to hear that. And here's two examples right here. My life is great. Reggie's doing some amazing things with his life, beginning, with his journey first and then his podcast to serve his communities so that our communities can get these messages from people who have lived experiences. These messages are for you guys that are our listeners. We expect that you take this information and use it. Reggie just mentioned resources. Resources are so valuable. I don't care if we're talking about getting therapy for sexual abuse, physical abuse, or just learning how to be a better father, learn how to be a better son, learn how to be a better employee. The information is out there. And as I stated earlier, the way you reach back is you seek out that information so that you become a better person in every rooms that you step in. The number one thing that we need to become is better fathers and better brothers to our young black men. We really
Mm-hmm.
need to be better fathers and better brothers to our young black men.
That's real. Well, thanks for sharing that. We'll have to get you on again. Maybe we can dive deeper into that to your story. But like I said, we are coming up on time, and we have to follow our guidelines and regulations for this one. So, brother, thank you so much for your time, and until next time, be blessed.
Peace.